Joining me now is former U.S. Attorney Greg Brower. He's a former FBI Assistant Director, former Legislative Counsel at the Department of Justice. Greg, good to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
So, been a little busy, maybe?
I think we all have been, yes. It's been an interesting week.
Private security firms doing clearances instead of the FBI. And there were a lot of controversies over clearances in the first Trump administration. For instance, Jared Kushner never got top secret clearance. That was blocked by the then CIA director, Gina Haspel, who was concerned, apparently, about a lot of foreign investments and possible conflicts of interest. And that was very upsetting to his father-in-law, the President of the United States, so it didn't help the relationship between the CIA and the President. But there were other instances of this where security clearances became a real problem.
Right.
What's at issue here?
Well, let me start by saying that this really is within the power of any president to determine exactly how he thinks this should be done.
President can declassify things?
Can declassify, can decide who gets clearances,
right,
and exactly how and at what level. And so there is some law around this, both in terms of statute and executive order. But at the end of the day, the president can abrogate all of that, decide for himself exactly how this should be done. And there is, I should say, somewhat of a practice of a tradition of having private security firms supplement some of the background investigation work that the FBI and other agencies do for incoming appointees and for security clearances. But to take it away from the FBI entirely would be unprecedented. That has been in place. There's an MOU between the White House and the FBI that governs the process.
Memorandum of Understanding.
And that's for appointees specifically. So we're really talking about two things. We're talking about backgrounds for appointees and would-be, cabinet officials, judicial nominees, and then the backgrounds for security clearances. But the FBI has played a role in both of those traditionally, and so to change that would be a big change. And I would imagine that some senators, including some Republican senators, might have something to say about that and will be part of this discussion.
They would have something to say about it if they did hearings and did confirmations, but there's another step here, right, which would be to have recess appointments where people could be made deputies and then, as a recess appointment, could be the acting director, right, with all the powers of the director.
Look, and every new president is eager to get his new people into place. They hit the ground running with the new administration, but there traditionally has been a process for that the Senate, as you know, plays an important role in. And so, again, the president has a lot of power in this regard, especially with a majority of senators on his side. But I suspect there will be some robust discussions with Senate leadership and the transition team and the president-elect himself about exactly how this should be done.
What about the tradition since Watergate that the Justice Department should be non-political, and the threats during the campaign to go after political enemies with prosecutions?
Well, that has been a tradition, as you mentioned, and an important one, I think. And again, I think that there are a number of senators who believe strongly in that tradition, and it's important for a lot of, I think, obvious reasons. There has been some campaign rhetoric about that issue. I'd like to think that we should give the benefit of the doubt in this regard and see exactly how this new administration handles it. But for all the reasons that there has been a strong kind of independent nature with respect to DOJ and the FBI, I think it's likely that we'll see that continue. It should continue, but we'll see.
And the FBI director, Chris Wray. So there's been a lot of criticism from Donald Trump in the past of Chris Wray. He appointed him.
Right.
But the FBI deliberately was given a 10-year term so that the person would not be subject to political pressure, no matter, depending on who gets elected, which party and which president.
That's right.
But it's still possible to fire Chris Wray because we know that James Comey was fired by Donald Trump.
Well, that's right. It's a 10-year term, and it was put into place exactly for the reasons you articulated. But it nevertheless is within the power of the president to make a change with respect to the FBI director. Chris Wray is, I've worked closely with him. He's a dedicated public servant. I think he's done a very good job as FBI director. But the president-elect has said the things that he has said, and it is within his power to make a change, so we'll have to see what happens. I think he would be well advised to keep Director Wray in place, though. It's a hard job to learn. Director Wray has learned it at this point, and some continuity would be good.